The front tire is leaning against the wall. From the outside, the tread looks showroom fresh, easily 2 more seasons in it. I flip it over. The inner edge is worn down to the steel belt, bare metal shining out at me. This tire is 4 months old. 4 months since the alignment. On the invoice, 1 line item, and a number about the price of half a tank. The car rolled onto the rack. The tech stared at a monitor for 4 minutes, walked out and said, "Got it dialed in. Everything's within spec." He wasn't lying. He just never gave me a single number. And here's the part that's going to make you uncomfortable about paying for this next time. 80% of what that machine does comes down to one angle, and that angle gets measured with a piece of string and a tape measure, to the millimeter. On the concrete in your own driveway. That expensive rig isn't selling you the measurement anybody can measure. It's selling you symmetry. And there's one turn of the wrench, exactly one, that separates "did it myself" from "wrecked it and now I'm driving to the shop with my hat in my hand." I'll name it before the end of the video. Skip it, and your steering wheel sits crooked after the first drive. 7 steps, 40 minutes, $0. Let's start with the thing that matters. Has the angle actually gone out on you, or hasn't it?
Kneel at the front wheel. Push your hand into the gap behind the tire, right up against the inner shoulder, and drag your palm along it. On a car that pulls to one side, that inner band comes back smooth, thin, almost polished. The outer half of the same tire still shows full tread and still looks perfectly healthy from 4 steps back. Nothing on the visible side announces anything. The damage lives where you never look. That isn't a hint, it's a verdict, and it was filed months ago. Uneven wear reads like handwriting once somebody shows you the letters. One edge gone while the center stays fine. Feathered edges that catch your palm dragging one way and slide smoothly the other. Sawtooth ridges standing across the blocks of tread. And the loudest letter of all, inner edge worn harder than the outer. That is close to a guaranteed toe problem. Not a maybe, not could be a dozen things. There's a second signature, and you've probably already felt it without naming it. Straight road, no wind, no cambering the asphalt. You loosen your grip and the car leans off its own line. Here's what I can't let go of. The workshop reads that same handwriting. They put the car on the machine confirms what your palm just told you in 11 seconds, and then they charge you for the reading. 3 angles can appear on that printout. Only one of them wanders off on its own under ordinary driving, and only one turns with a wrench on your own driveway. Walk a few meters out in front of your car and drop down to rim height. Properly down, eyes level with the wheel centers. 2 wheels that ought to be pointing dead straight, both aimed a hair inward. That's the entire fault, visible from 6 meters away once somebody tells you where to stand. That angle is toe, your wheels seen from above, converging or diverging. Camber is the lean of the wheel. Caster is the tilt of the steering axis. Both matter. Neither drifts off during normal use, and neither is a driveway job. Which leaves toe alone under the light, the angle most responsible for chewing tires, the one that potholes and curbs and time knock out of place, and the only one you can adjust at home. Now the figure that rewrites that invoice in your glove box. Toe is about 80% of any workshop's alignment work. 4/5 of what you paid for is one angle, set by twisting a threaded rod. The rest arrives with a vocabulary attached, and the vocabulary is mostly there to keep you quiet at the counter. Think about what those 2 inward wheels are actually doing while you drive. They aren't rolling. They're being dragged sideways across the asphalt, like shoving a loaded box across a rough floor instead of lifting it. At 60 kilometers an hour, that scrub repeats thousands of times a minute, every minute you're moving. You pay for it continuously, in rubber and in fuel, and no warning light on your dashboard will ever mention it. Before any of this is worth measuring, there's a 2-minute check that can prove the whole job pointless. Wheel off the ground, hands at 12 and 6 on the tire, firm shove in and out. Then hands at 9 and 3, same shove. I had a car in like that once. The owner had paid for 2 alignments inside a single year and couldn't understand why the pull kept coming back. First reel, first shove, a soft knock somewhere behind the brake disc, worn joint. Every penny of both those alignments had gone into geometry that a loose joint threw straight back out inside a week. Not 1 month of benefit. The angles were never the problem, and nobody at that counter had spent 2 minutes finding out. So this comes before everything. Any play, any slop, any knock from that shove means a damaged ball joint or a wheel bearing. Aligning a car with loose components isn't a compromise. It's money set on fire, like tuning a guitar with a cracked neck. It holds for 10 minutes. 2 more things have to be honest before your tape can be. Pressure. All 4 tires at the figure printed on the label inside your driver's door, not the number molded into the tire sidewall, not what your mate reckons. 1 soft corner changes how that corner sits, and the corner sitting wrong hands you a false reading. You'll spend a Saturday chasing an angle that was never out. Then the steering wheel, and this is where people get lazy. It has to be genuinely centered, not looks about right. Find real straight ahead by driving down a flat street and letting the car settle into its own line. Stop there. Tape a mark on the wheel rim and another on the column, lined up, and leave both in place for the entire job. That taped pair is your witness. It's the only thing that will tell you later whether you moved the geometry or just moved the steering wheel. And understand the best outcome here. The cheapest thing that can happen when you learn to measure is discovering there was nothing to measure. That's not a wasted morning, that's a service you didn't buy. A car that survives those 3 checks has earned the right to be measured. From here, your tape only tells the truth if one other thing is honest first, and that step is the one almost everybody skips.
2 buckets, 2 bricks, 10 meters of heavy nylon line, held at rim center height. Run the cord along one side of the car, front to back, parallel to the body, just brushing the tires. Support it on 4 objects of identical height, roughly a meter ahead of the front wheel and a meter behind the rear, each side. Metal tape at least 5 meters. A marker. Tape. Now the step that decides whether any of this was worth doing. Measure from the cord to the center of the front rim. Write it down. Measure from the cord to the center of the rear rim. Write that down. Those 2 distances must be identical. Not close, identical, to the millimeter. And you move the supports a centimeter at a time, over and over, until they are. That took me 20 minutes the first time. Shuffle a bucket, measure, shuffle it back, measure again, with a voice in your ear the whole while telling you close enough is close enough. It isn't. Not here. Every number you take afterwards is taken against that cord, so an error in the cord becomes an error in everything that follows it. Close enough on the reference line is the exact reason driveway alignment has a bad name. Keep the car honest too. Normal fuel level, empty trunk, nobody sitting inside, level concrete. Ride height changes tow, so a loaded car and an empty one will hand you 2 different figures, and neither one is wrong. They're measuring 2 different cars. Then it happens. Both numbers match, and that length of nylon stops being string. It's an instrument. And that's the workshop's whole advantage laid bare. A known reference line. They have a rig, you have a cord, and 2 equal numbers. Same information. The line is honest now. Time to read the wheel, and it's about to give up 2 numbers whose difference is the figure the counter never mentions.
Hook the tape on the cord. Read across to the front lip of the front rim. That's a number. Write it on the back of your hand. Now slide back and read from the cord to the rear lip of that same rim. Second number. Subtract 1 from the other. That difference is your toe on that wheel, exactly. Not an estimate, not an indication. The subtraction is the measurement. Front edge closer to the cord than the rear means toe in. The wheel is aimed inward. Front edge farther away means toe out. 2 tape readings and a subtraction. That is the diagnostic service. That is what the machine does.
What should the numbers say? Most passenger cars want between 1.5 and 3 millimeters of total toe in, split between the two front wheels, roughly 75 hundredths of a millimeter up to about 1.5 millimeters per wheel. A gap thinner than a fingernail decides whether your tires live or die. And now the figure I owed you from the first minute. If the front-to-rear difference on a wheel comes out greater than 3 millimeters, that car is misaligned and needs adjusting. Under it, leave it alone. One thing trips people constantly. Between every reading and every adjustment, roll the car forward a couple of meters and let it settle. Suspension that hasn't relaxed is the commonest reason the same wheel gives you two different answers 10 minutes apart. The tape isn't lying to you. The springs are still holding a position you put them in. That car with the shaved inner edges, the one whose owner had paid twice, the subtraction came out over 4 millimeters of toe out, miles past the limit. One piece of arithmetic on the back of a hand explained a full year of ruined rubber and 2 paid visits where nobody had ever quoted a figure at all. That's the moment an owner stops being a customer and becomes a judge. A number that far out has to be turned back. But there's a way to get the same total toe figure with no string, no jack and no bricks, in 5 minutes, at the cost of a little precision.
Chalk in your hand, car on level ground, steering wheel centered. Mark the tread at the back of the front tire, at rim center height. A chalk line or a fine scratch doesn't matter, as long as it's thin. Now the identical mark at the identical point on the opposite front tire. Pass the tape under the car and measure between those two marks. Number on your hand. Then push the car forward, slowly, no jerking, until those same 2 marks have come round to the front of the tires, still at rim center height. Same chalk points. Measure between them again. The difference between those 2 figures is your total toe. Smaller at the front means toe in. Larger at the front means toe out. 2 tape pulls and 1 push of the car, finished in the gravel before your neighbor has finished asking what you're doing. I've watched people go quiet at exactly that point. Not because it's clever, because it's so small. The whole diagnosis, the line on the invoice, the thing that supposedly needed a computer, a laser, and a booking 2 weeks out, fits into 2 chalk marks and a shove. It's slightly less precise than the chord, that's the honest trade, but it's the same measurement, reading the same geometry, and it's how a working workshop keeps diagnosing cars on the day their alignment rig is broken. Which tells you where the answer had been coming from all along. If you're still here, hit like. What comes next is what separates people who read their car from people who quietly wreck it. Reading the fault is free. Correcting it means putting a wrench on a threaded rod, and turning only one side is exactly how drivers end up with a steering wheel that sits crooked forever.
Follow the steering rack outward toward the wheel and you'll find them. The tie rod ends, threaded with a ball form where they meet the steering knuckle and a lock nut sitting hard against each one. Loosen that lock nut, loosen, not remove. Then rotate the body of the tie rod itself. Every turn changes the effective length of that rod, and the length of the rod is what aims the wheel. Lengthen it and toe in decreases. Shorten it and toe increases. That's the entire mechanism your money has been renting. A bolt getting longer and shorter under your hand. Now the rate that turns guesswork into control. Roughly every half turn changes toe at that wheel by about 1 millimeter. It's model dependent, so treat it as a working starting rule rather than gospel. But it means you're no longer twiddling and hoping. You know your number, you know how far out you are, and you know how many turns that is. And here's the rule nobody bothers telling amateurs, the one that costs people their steering wheel. I had a car 2 millimeters out, toe out. 1 full turn per side, nothing more. Wrench on the left rod one way, wrench on the right rod the other way. Opposite directions, identical amounts. Done that way, the toe changes while the center stays exactly where it was, and that taped mark on your steering wheel never moves. Turn only one side and yes, your toe comes into spec, and your steering wheel sits a few degrees off-center for the rest of that car's life. The car drives fine, it just permanently looks like something's wrong with it, because something is. Then it's a loop, and you have to accept that. Adjust, roll the car, let it settle, measure. Adjust again, measure again, until the target comes up. The other side is the same procedure mirrored,
Nothing new for your hands to learn. That's the competence. One quantified turn against one known number. And the last quarter turn of this job can snap an aluminium component if you treat it like a lug nut.
Lock nuts back down, firm, and then stop. The tie rod end is aluminium. Lean on it like you're doing up a wheel nut and it can break. And the tie rod end that fails is a wheel that stops answering the steering wheel. Tight enough that the rod cannot rotate under driving vibration. Not 1 degree tighter than that. If you want the figure, most cars land between 35 and 50 Newton meters. A firm pull on a standard wrench puts you in that neighborhood. If you own a torque wrench, use it. This is one of the few places on a car where as tight as I can is the wrong instinct. Then you prove it, and this is my favorite part of the whole job. Early Sunday. Straight flat street. No curves, no potholes, no traffic. About 50 on the speedometer. Hands off the wheel, fingers hovering a centimeter from the rim, not sitting in your lap, and you watch. Straight tracking. Taped mark still sitting dead level. The car holding its own lane for 200 meters. That's the verification. All of it. And it is identical in every detail to the test performed after a paid alignment. Same road, same speed, same released wheel, same 200 meters. The only difference is that one version comes with a folded slip on the passenger seat. That slip was never proof of anything you couldn't confirm yourself on a Sunday morning. If the car pulls or the taped mark isn't level, go back. Measure, turn, roll, measure. That isn't failure, that's the loop doing its job. But there's a case where you go back, and the front axle measures perfectly every time, and the inner edges keep dying anyway. A car I set up myself. Front toe inside spec on the cord, road tested, tracking dead straight with the mark level. 6,000 kilometers later, that same inner shoulder going bald again. The front axle was never the guilty one. The rear wheels had been dragging slightly sideways the whole time, quietly scrubbing rubber off the inside of every front tire I had just made perfect. Nothing I could turn on a front tie rod could reach them. So let me draw the line, because that line is what makes everything before it worth trusting. This method solves roughly 80% of alignment problems. It is not magic, and I'm not selling it as magic. Take the car to a real workshop when there's major suspension damage, when you hit a pothole hard enough that the car has felt wrong up through the seat ever since. Take it when the wheel shakes badly in your hands at speed. That is not an angle asking for a quarter turn. And take it when you've applied this method properly, twice, and the numbers still come back out of spec. Those cases usually mean camber or caster, the angles that need specialized equipment and almost never drift under normal use, or a bent part that needs replacing rather than adjusting. Rear axle toe belongs on that list too, and it produces exactly the same inner edge wear as a front problem. A flawless front job will not touch it. That's where a workshop genuinely earns its money. The four-wheel thrust reference, all four corners measured against the car's real direction of travel. No cord run along one side reproduces that, and I won't pretend otherwise. That's the border. Notice how narrow it is next to what you've been paying, and how rarely you've actually been standing on the wrong side of it. One habit is left, and it decides, in 5 minutes with no tools at all, whether you need any of this in the first place.
Once a month, crouch down in front of your own car at rim height. Look for wheels visibly leaning in or out more than they should. Look at the inner and outer edges of the tread for uneven wear. Then, run your open hand across the tread, side to side. If your palm catches on sawtooth ridges, little tooth-like steps you can feel but barely see, that car needs alignment. That's the whole inspection, and it's the difference between knowing what you're buying and paying for services you don't need. Look at the 10 steps in your hands now. The wear pattern names the fault. The angle you're chasing has a name, and it isn't camber. Play, pressure, and a centered wheel decide whether it's even worth measuring. The cord, made truly parallel, becomes an instrument. 2 rim readings, subtracted, become the diagnosis. 3 millimeters decides. 2 chalk marks do the same job with no tools at all. Half a turn per millimeter, mirrored on both rods, becomes the correction. A released wheel at 50 proves it. A workshop earns its fee only past a very narrow border.
And once a month, your palm keeps the whole thing honest. The number I owed you from the very first minute is 3 millimeters of total toe. Under 3 millimeters, your car needs nothing, and any alignment sold to you this month is labor, not repair. Over 3 millimeters, the fault is real, and the correction is a threaded rod turned by hand. One more thing you weren't promised, and it matters more than people realize. Whenever you turn those rods, identical amounts, opposite directions, both sides. That single habit is the entire difference between a corrected car and a car that drives fine with a permanently crooked steering wheel. Today, before you book anything, crouch at both front wheels, run your palm along both inner shoulders, and check the pressures against the label in the door. If the palm catches on ridges, or the inner band is thinner than the outer, take the 2 tape readings this weekend. So tell me, how many times has that same line appeared on your invoices? And did anybody ever show you a figure in millimeters to justify it? Some of you will keep paying because a 4-wheel rig is worth the fee on your car. Others are finished handing money over for a subtraction they can do themselves. Both sides have a case. Put yours in the comments and I'll read them.
Subscribe, because there's one thing on that car quietly costing you more than every alignment fee combined, and almost nobody measures that one either.